Introducing the Italian Grape Geek program, a new and original approach to Italian wines. IGG, as it's fondly known, is a book, a podcast, an online theory course, and an in-person tasting course. Our pocket-sized book briefly introduces 80 grapes with benchmark producers, helping you find and taste these great wines on your own. Space to make your own notes makes the book a personal record of your Italian wine journey. No time to read? We've read the whole book out loud with added insights from Italian wine ambassadors. Listen for free on Italian Wine Podcast. Obsessed with Italian wine? Take the super accessible online theory course. Get certified as an Italian grape geek. Want more? Our international IGG educators have got your in-person tasting course to cap off your full IGG immersion. Go to mamajumboshrimp.com and sign up today.
Today, our wines starting to be more known. There are a lot of interesting wine here in Valtellina. But sometimes when I'm alone in vineyard and I saw some stone wall, I'm thinking about the guys in the past that had the thinking to build that the way that have in those time. No, I finished to restore a stone wall 2 days ago because I bought for 1,000 square meters close to my vineyard in Sassella. It's crazy because if you think the work that we made is crazy. For example, my father every time he say me, "You are stupid. We had 7 John Deeres at home and you go in a place where you cannot use 1 John Deere, you know." But to be a little bit crazy, you have to love also this style of life.
Welcome to this special Clubhouse session of the Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as members of the Italian wine community engage in fascinating conversations about contemporary wine topics. If you enjoyed the show, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. And remember to subscribe and rate the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your pods.
Hi everyone, this is Beatrice welcoming you to the Italian Wine Clubhouse Ambassadors Corner, one of the top-ranked shows on Italian Wine Podcast. Here, our ambassadors get the mic to interview their favorite producers with total freedom. And if you miss it live, no worries, it's all recorded and dropped later on the Italian Wine Podcast. Today's guest host is Stephanie Johnson. Stephanie is a wine writer and wine educator based in New York City. She holds the WSET Diploma in Wine and Spirits and is certified as an Italian wine expert by Vinitaly Academy. Her wine career spans the journalism, retail, and restaurant sectors, including 5 years as wine director at City Winery in Soho. She joined Wine and Spirits magazine as tasting director in 2013 and later served as Italian wine editor from 2016 and 2024. Stephanie has judged at international competitions such as Concours Mondial du Sauvignon in Bordeaux and 5-star wines in Verona. She has led masterclasses for top sommeliers in New York City and presented at major industry events including Vinitaly and Wine to Wine in Verona. A passionate educator, she teaches WSET Level 2, Level 3 and Diploma courses at New York's International Wine Center. Her upcoming venture, SteepleJack, will spotlight the heroic stories of Italian wine producers, blending deep expertise with compelling storytelling. Today, she's going to interview Marco Ferrari. So, Stephanie, are you ready for our 3 ritual questions?
I'm ready.
Perfect. How did you discover the wines of Marco Ferrari?
Oh, well, I was in Valtellina a few years ago researching a story for Wine and Spirits magazine, and I was talking to some of the producers that I already knew, including Arpepe and Dirupi. And I always ask, who else should I speak to? Who's doing good work in this area? And both of them mentioned Marco. And Marco had worked for Arpepe in the past. And so I contacted him and he agreed to see me on very short notice. And I saw him, I came to his place late on one day around 5 o'clock thinking it would be just a flyby. And we ended up talking for more than 2 hours. So it was a great chat and I learned a lot about him and what he's doing. And I thought he had a really interesting perspective on Valtellina.
That sounds really nice. So tell us, why did you select Marco as your featured guest?
Well, as I said, I mean, I think a lot of the people that I spoke to in Valtellina were people who were from the area, who had grown up there, who had a long history of winemaking in their families, or they at least had lived in the area for a long time. But Marco did not come from Valtellina. He was kind of an outsider. And so I thought that was a really interesting perspective to bring on that place, which is so unique and not the easiest place to make wine. So for someone to come and choose to make wine in Valtellina, I thought was an interesting story.
Perfect. What are the learning objectives that we should expect from this interview?
Well, I'd like people to understand a little bit more about this region because I think it's still a little bit under the radar. And what are some of the challenges that people face making wine in Valtellina, including some of the climate challenges as well.
Perfect. It sounds like a really nice plan. So it's time for me to mute myself. Now I'm turning over the floor to you, Stephanie. Have a nice interview, guys.
Thank you so much.
Grazie mille, thank you.
Ciao, Marco.
Ciao, Stephanie.
Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure for me.
So yes, let's just start kind of from the recent events. Can you tell us a little bit just about this past vintage and what was your experience of the 2025 vintage and for Valtellina in general?
But in general, to the beginning, to be honest, was a little bit tough because we had a lot of rain on the beginning in the month like May and June. On the end of June, beginning July was so hot, and also the growing, they rallied a little bit in this moment, and after. From the middle of July until the 10th of August, we had a quite good quantity of rain that permit to the plant to work in a very, very nice way to arrive to the right ripeness. After we had a nice August and with a very heat weather during the week on the 15th. And after, in September, we have a little bit of rain that it permit grape to gain a little bit more juice. But in the same time, they give also the possibility to start a little bit earlier than the usual situation for harvesting, and I start picking from the 2nd of October, and I finish around the 12th. And to be honest about the vintage and the wines now that we taste now, the babies, I'm so happy because to the beginning I was a little bit afraid because when we taste the grape, we feel a very tough tannins on the skin, and it's for that we use a little bit different way for extraction. And until now, I'm so happy because they have a very nice deepness and a very, very nice complexity. And finger crossed for
As always.
25.
Okay. Well, thanks. Okay, that's good news. I think when I saw you, I think it was the 2023 vintage. It was not an easy vintage, I believe. So I'm glad to hear that this one seems to be
No, yeah,
positive.
that 23 yes, was a tough vintage during the growing season, but about the wines, I'm so happy because are less but so nice.
Yeah. Mhm. So, Marco, as I said to Beatrice, I was interested to hear your story, especially because so many of the people that I spoke to in Valtellina, had a long history of family roots in that area. And it seems like a very traditional growing area to me. And you did not come from Valtellina. I believe you come from Lombardia. Is this correct?
Yeah, I was born in Brescia,
Yeah.
closer to Valtellina. It's a 2 hour by car.
Mm-hmm. And so I just thought maybe you could just very quickly give our listeners an overview of how you got from Brescia to where you are now.
Yeah, very shortly. I was born in Brescia and I grew up in a family of farmers. My father was a farmer, produced milk for Grana Padano. When I was 18, I went to university for studying economy because my mother pushed me out of the farmer's life because it was a tough life. And I went in Bologna and after in Rome also for my university my studies. And after I finished my first job in Franciacorta, to Franciacorta Consorzio, is an organization that they develop and promote the Franciacorta appellation. And after, I started to work for the little winery in Franciacorta to get Enrico. And after some years of work for them, I decided to have an experience abroad. To be honest, at the beginning, I looking for the new word for improve better the English and for have more fun experience. But to be honest, I looking for France because was more close, and in the same time, I think they can give me more. To the beginning, I started to work in Rhône Valley, and I worked there for 3 years. I left my art also there because, Cornas is my village. It's like I never left the village. I have a strong relationship until now also with all the community there. And after 3 years of works there that I called my university, I coming back to Italy and I decide starting my own winery here in Valtellina. And like you say, for the first 2 years, I work for me and for our paper. And from March 21, I'm a free man. I work only for me. And I say thanks a lot to our paper because it helped me a lot to the beginning. And basically, I choose Valtellina mainly for 3 reasons. No one say nothing to me, but for me, the best red Italian grape Nebbiolo. And here we add it. The biotype is called Chiavenasca. The second stuff that very remarked me to choose the Valtellina is the possibility to find and work with very old vines. For example, the youngest vines that I have now, they had 50 years old. With the climate change, here I think we had gained a lot in ripeness, and in the same time, here we had also the possibility to go up. And to be honest, also here, also now we have the season, rain, we have a good condition to growing grape and to make good wine, I think.
I agree. What was the first time that you visited Valtellina?
The first time that I visited Valtellina, I was 24. I think today I'm 39. The first time was, around 24 years old, and was passionate in wines, and I discovered a lot of different territories. And the Valtellina, is 2 hours by car from Brescia and also from Franciacorta. And I was every time very impressed by the way the terraces are cultivated here in Valtellina, because here is a terroir very unique, because you don't have the possibility to use any tractors, and it's all by hand. You build a relationship with your plant like a baby. So when I spoke with my vines, I call my babies, because I touch it 15 times, 20 times every year, because, I made all myself. I have only my father that give me an hand. And, it's like a gardening work, very different than other region around the world.
Yeah, I remember when I was there talking with Danilo Drocco from Nino Negri, and he was talking about the fact that I think he still is the president of the consortio, and he was saying that one of the biggest challenges there was preventing growers and local producers from leaving because it was such a hard place to make wine. And so I find it so interesting that you people like you are coming in and seeing it as an opportunity instead of, a lot of difficult challenges. Although maybe you can talk about, it's a great place because of the Nebbiolo and the old vines and the possibility of this interesting terroir. But can you talk a little bit about some of the real challenges of making wine in Valtellina?
I think is a big challenge, because That like I say, you build a relationship with your plant that are really like baby, and you make a lot of effort. You have to like. For me, is normal, no? That if I have to go in vineyard, make 80 steps to work for going office, And I think today we have the challenge also because our wines starting to be more known, and I think there are a lot of interesting wine here in Valtellina. But sometimes when I'm alone in vineyard and I saw some stone wall, and I'm thinking about the guys in the past that had the thinking that to build that with the way that I have in those time, no? It's not like today that we will arrive to produce a wines, to sell wines, and at the same time to live in a correct way, One time was a little bit more for surviving, and was crazy what these men do. For example, I finished to build, to restore a stone wall 2 days ago because I bought for 1,000 square meters close to my vineyard in Sassella. That one time was vineyard, but after go in bush. Now we have cut all the wood and we have rebuilt the wall, and it's crazy because if you think the work that we made is crazy. For example, my father every time he say me, "You are stupid. We had 7 John Deeres at home, and you go in a place where you cannot use one John Deere, But to be a little bit crazy, you have to love also this style of life."
And you have, I think our listeners are all pretty well informed about a lot of Italian wine regions, but just in general, there are several different subzones of Valtellina, and I believe you have vineyards in Sassella and Inferno. Is that still correct?
Yeah, it's correct.
Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit about, why you chose to start working in those subzones and some of the differences between them?
Immediately, I started to looking for a vineyard in Sassella and in Inferno, basically because it's the ones that I more know and that I more love. In Sassella, we had wines more on balsamic notes, Mediterranean notes, with a lot of elegance and a very, very nice deepness. And in Inferno, more serious, the tannins. For me, Inferno is more like Serralunga wines, where you have this earthy part, this liquorize, these tannins little bit sometimes stronger, sometimes little bit difficult to manage. In Sassella is all in finesse, and I think also for the conformation of the terroir, the Sassella, they benefit a lot from the wind that arrive from the Lake of Como, and are more opened, more influenced by the winds, and also the terraces are a little bit more soft, you don't have a lot of very, very steep vineyard like in Inferno. For example, in Inferno is a little bit more alter because are different valley, little bit more closed, and the terraces also are a little bit smaller, and the effect of the stone walls are play a very important role because during the day they recover all the heat, during the night they put out the hot that they recover during the day. In the same time is very, very interesting because also every village one time have his own person that he make and the selection, the clones that he work well for his slope, no?
Mm-hmm.
And for example, in Sassella and Inferno, we have a very, very different kind of clones. For example, in Sassella is more every time darker the wines. Also the grapes are more dark, a little bit smaller. In Inferno, we have a little bit more bigger grapes, and also the wines are a little bit more light than Sassella, sorry. And also in Inferno, the soil is basically more sandy because it's mica schist and she's completely decomposed. In Sassella, the soil is less decomposed. We have more mica schist and a lot of presence. Because Rocce Rosse is because the rocky is red, but it's red because they had a lot of presence of irons.
Okay, so that's a real difference in terms of the style, even though they're not far from each other. Are there other subzones that interest you that you would like to try to buy vineyards and experiment with making wine in some of the other subzones?
Allora, to be honest, I think also Valgella is interesting, also Grumello is interesting. To be honest, I'm arrived to the right surface to work because now I have 2 hectares, 0.5 is enough because I don't want to grow more because I prefer to stay small and to continue to achieve new details. I have a small plots in Grumello, but I use for the Rosso di Valtellina because it's not so high. It's around 400 meters and it's a vineyard from 50 years old. But I vinify separately every years, but every years I use for the Rosso di Valtellina, to be honest. But also in Grumello, in Valgella, in Maroggia, we have a lot of interesting vineyards. But until now, I am more focused on Inferno in Sassella for the Superiore. And for the Rosso, I use the vineyard that arriving from my village, Tresivio, in Valtellina Superiore, and the small plots from Grumello area.
You mentioned that your Grumello plot is a little bit lower elevation, and that was another thing that I found really interesting when I was talking to people there was how, the elevation, the difference in the skins of the grapes from the lower elevations to the upper elevations, and that the upper elevations develop the thicker skins, which is why they end up being in the more serious wines, whereas the lower elevations are used more for the Rosso wines. Is that kind of what you have found in your winemaking?
Yeah, I think the middle part of the slope is the best part, in my opinion. After, depending of the vintage, sometimes also the lowest part is more interesting and the upper part is more interesting. But the best band for me, in my opinion, is the middle part. In a winemaking, to be honest, I vinified all the plots separately because I want to understand. Because if you don't try, you cannot understand. For example, for the Rosso, I make 2 harvests. One with the lowest part, around 400 meters, with a vineyard in Grumello and a vineyard here outside the amphitheater of Calvario on Valtellina Superiore. And after 10 days, 12 days, I picked the upper part, is around 680 meters, one part in Valtellina Superiore, the other part in Rosso Valtellina. And yes, in a vintage like 25, you arrive with a very nice ripeness everywhere. In a vintage like 24, for example, that it was so rainy and cold, you struggle a little bit to arrive to the right ripeness on the upper part. And in the middle, you arrive in the right ripeness, depending also a lot of the variables like altitude and the growing season, because those 2 variables are very focused about your ripeness.
Okay. One of the things you told me when we were talking in your cellar, which I thought actually your cellar was really interesting. Can you just talk a little bit about how you found that? It's your cellar. It was a cheese aging cellar or something before.
Yeah. For example, when I arrived in Valtellina, I'm arriving in December 18, and I visit, I think, 50 cellar, old cellar, a lot so nice, but uncomfortable for work. At the same time, in July, 2 months until starting picking, I don't have a cellar. I find this place that there was a room where they aging cheese. I broke the wall, the wall, and now is an opening space digging in the mountain. And this for that is so interesting because they maintain very well the temperature on the wines. And in the same time, I say this stuff because we are uncomfortable in the vineyard. I have to be comfortable in the cellar, and the cellar now is so comfortable. In the same time, I found also a very nice people because the owner is a super person, and he helped me a lot in a lot of stuff. He's like a MacGyver guy, you know. We need a MacGyver every day.
One of the things that you mentioned at that time, I'm curious, again, like I said, to me, Valtellina seemed like a fairly traditional place in many ways in terms of winemaking. And you mentioned that one of the things you had started doing based on your experience in the Rhône is using some stems in your winemaking. That's not something I heard from, I don't think, anyone else in Valtellina. And so I'm curious how that's going and whether you're finding that a good approach. Do you like the effect of the stems? Are you still doing that? And how is that going?
Yeah, I think I starting to use the word cluster from the vintage 20, my second vintage, because I want to understand on the first vintage, I don't want to take a lot of risk, to be honest. And I started from the 20. And I think is very interesting because, the world cluster gives you, in my opinion, more complexity on the wines, more vivacity on the wines, and it gives you a dimension more. After, I am not a Taliban, but I am an open-minded person. It's the using of the word cluster, it depending of the vintage. Because, for example, in a vintage like 24, where the stem are green, I use less part of a whole cluster. In the vintage like 25, I use 100% whole cluster everywhere. On the 23 was the same stuff. On the 22, for example, is around the 70%. It depends because, you have to have the stem that have to be or yellow or yellow brown, have to be ripe because the risk is arriving to have green tannins or green sensation on the wines. For that, yes, I was the first that I use this kind of winemaking. For sure, arriving from my background, because for me is, my opinion, the best way for vinified a grape. But in the same time, you have to know better the grape, you have to know better the vineyard, and also the vintage is another variable. And it's for that that I choose the percentual of world cluster in function of the vintage.
Do you know, have you heard of anyone else who's been experimenting with that?
Until now, no.
You're still alone.
No, until now, no. There is only a friend of mine that he have started last year to vinified, so this vintage to vinified, and they use a little bit because I help him. But until now, the wines are so interesting. If you can, the next time we go to taste this wine.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's interesting because I do hear more and more people in Barolo doing this with Nebbiolo.
To be honest, yes, because I think The climate change, also using the steam, they help you to decrease a little bit the alcohol because, in the steam you have the 80% is water and the 20% is tannins. And, sometimes they help you to have less alcohol developed in your wines. And I think in our valley until now, we have the chance to don't have a lot of alcohol. But I think in a terroir like Langhe, where they have more structure than us and a little bit more alcohol than us, could be very interesting. But I think also there is a lot of some producer that use it from a lot of time, like, Burlot that use it for the Montvilliers or a little bit in Canubi. I think, yes, could be a good approach to vinify, but we have to be careful to use it with Nebbiolo because when it's green, and green is not so nice to taste.
Yes, yes. On a recent podcast on this channel, we heard from the folks at Borgo del Tiglio in Friuli about the just horrible rainfalls and the landslides and just devastating. And I'm curious, the climate in Valtellina it seems kind of, you're on the edge, you're way up in the north, you're in the mountains. What are the biggest threats, and have you seen any changes in terms of, the severity of different storms or different effects of the climate?
One of the worst thing of the climate change that you can have a lot of hailstorm during the summer. And one time was a little bit more rare to have it, but in the last, starting with my first vintage on the 19, I see a little bit of storm in the 19, in the 20 a lot, in the 21 a little bit, 22 nothing, but was super, super, super hot. 23 a lot of hailstorm, 24 a little bit in Sassella, and last year just a little bit in Sassella, and finger crossed for the 26. But every year is more often that arrive some stuff like that. For sure, now, for example, we are in winter, but we had some snow in the middle of November, but now it's quite hot for the season. The climate change also here, but I think here for us is a challenge because I think in the past they struggle a little bit to achieve a very right ripeness. I think today we got it, and I think it's nice to have it, and in the same time, yes, it's more warm than the past, but in the same time we have the season. For example, I've been in Tuscany in the beginning of July, there will be 42 degrees, Here there will be 35. It was hot, but that 35 to 42 is too much, You're like a chicken that you roast.
Yeah, that is something that a number of people commented in Valtellina that, almost in an embarrassed way, they said, climate change maybe has helped us a little bit. And in fact, you get more ripeness more reliably. And you also have, whereas some other regions don't have this ability, you have the ability to keep going up further, higher, if it gets warmer. So it's an interesting opportunity, I guess, for the future for this region.
But absolutely, because if you go up until 1,000 meters, you have terraces. Now they are not cultivated and the trees growing up. But in the past, they use it. And we can restore these terraces if the climate continues to be crazy. For that, I'm a little bit comfortable because I had this possibility, For sure, it was in another terroir where I don't have this possibility. I was a little bit afraid because when you use your babies, your wines that are suffer and during the summer, you suffer you also. It's not easy. to show your plant that are suffer a lot heat, they don't have water. It's complicated, you know. In the same time, also if the plant suffer a lot, they continue to develop sickness. But I think we have a very good challenge for the future, to be honest, because we can go up.
Yeah, we are getting close to the end of the year, and early in 2026, there will be a big event in your neighborhood, the Olympics, the Winter Olympics. Is that something that people are excited about in your region? Do you expect to see any effects from that in terms of tourism or more attention on Valtellina?
I think the Olympics a good way to more increase the knowing of the Valtellina and of the Valtellina wines. Now we have the first challenge and is guest in the best way as we can. The people that are arriving now for the Olympics, they have to go back to home and say Valtellina, Valtellina, Valtellina again. And after, they can give to us a very nice possibility in the future. For sure, also us, we have to do more for increase our awareness around the world, I think, because it's important also that, yes, the people arriving, and it's just so important because I think all the people that are coming to pay a visit and they coming with me in vineyard are shocked because you know, when you see this kind of terraces, when you see the babies of 90 years old, you know, it's nice.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they give you, when you think in the men have minded these terraces, is crazy, you know. Is a stunning beauty. I think the Olympics can give to us tools to increasing our awareness of the valley.
Yeah, I mean, if our listeners have never been to Valtellina, it's really one of the most dramatic wine regions in Italy, in the world, really, I think. It's so staggering and stunning to go for the first time and see. It's like, it's just hard to believe that people are able to farm in this way. And one thing that I guess I would love to hear you give, you know, for our ambassadors, for the people we want to have go out and talk about Italian wine. You know, a lot of people, you know, your visitors from the Olympics, people who are already interested in Nebbiolo are familiar probably with Barolo and Barbaresco. Can you give us the talking points about like how Valtellina Nebbiolo differs from the wines from the Langhe?
Allora, basically, we are in the mountains. One of the first things when I was very, very afraid when I make analysis on the juice on the first vintage was the acidity. Because, you know, I had the same acidity of the whites that I had in Rhône. And I say, fuck, I take, sorry, I'm not, sorry.
It's okay.
And I take the wrong choice to harvesting. I have to wait more. The turning point was no. Here we have a very nice acidity because we have a poor soil, we have an alpine climate, and in the same time we have to play with the acidity. We have to be bravo to develop acidity in elegance, in fineness, and in deepness. In Barolo, you know, in Langhe, in generally, you have more structure. The wines are more based on structure because they have more. They have the soil are more richer than us. Here, the soil had a pH like 6.5, you know, and you feel that in the wine. When you taste the wines from Valtellina, you have to feel the acidity, you have to feel the saltiness of the minerality of the rockies, you have to feel the elegance that we have here.
Yeah. One of the words that came up when I was speaking to Faso at Dirupi was verticality.
Verticality.
Yeah, that is a word that I use a lot when I'm describing the wines of Valtellina. Well, I think we have probably reached the end of our time here. I want to thank you, Marco, for joining me, for getting over all of the technical difficulties that we both experienced. Thank you. I'm so happy to bring a little bit more attention to this wine region that I do think flies too much under the radar and that should have more attention from all of the ambassadors and from many parts of the world. I just think it's such an amazing region, and the wines are so beautiful and interesting to explore. So I hope that everyone will take the opportunity to try more Valtellina wines.
I hope to. Absolutely. No, because, I think also our wines are so contemporary, We are in the right moment with our wines. We have just to continue to push to the well-knowing to us. And also to put the focus on the difference, because when the people taste Nebbiolo, thinking immediately to Langhe. But when they taste Valtellina wines, could be the people expect some stuff that they don't find. But we are not this Nebbiolo. We are Nebbiolo from a mountain where we have elegance, we have minerality. These are our key points.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you so much.
And
Grazie mille.
yes, let's think about Valtellina as we're all watching the Olympics this February.
Okay.
Surely that's what I will do. I will drink more Valtellina wines while I'm watching the Olympics, because that was such a nice interview. So I think it's the perfect pairing for this February.
All right.
Absolutely. But also for January,
Yeah, for every time of the year.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Stephanie and Marco. You were such a delight, and that was such a nice interview. Thank you so much, guys. For wrap things up, for those who are interested to participate, just send us a DM to our Instagram or mail our Italian Wine Podcast producer at info@italianwinepodcast.com. Thank you again, Stephanie and Marco, and thank you to everyone who's listening in. That's a wrap from Italian Wine Podcast. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.